gentlemen, live sports radios were distributed as you entered today. Select the channel as shown on the video board to tune in and listen to your favorite coach or student athlete. Also be sure to use the official College Football Playoff Media Day hashtag, CFP Media Day, and share your photos on social media.
Are we starting?
You guys are going to really have to speak up.
Well, wait, am I making a statement?
Yeah,
or?
He'll open real quick. He's just going to welcome everybody. Are we good? Can we get it? Yeah, you go ahead and get started. There's no introduction, correct? They're ready to go. Just greet them and then we'll start with questions.
Well, I'd just like to say how pleased and happy our players, our team, our coaches, our entire family is to have an opportunity to play in a national championship game. I'd like to welcome all of you here, our fans, all the people who have supported, our program throughout the course of the year, to the national championship game. I guess when you play in a championship game, you expect to play a really good team, and Clemson certainly is a really good team, and this is the kind of games that, players look forward to playing in if they're great competitors, and we obviously have a lot of great competitors, and so do they. So this should be an outstanding football game. Christian Miller is questionable for the game. He hasn't been able to do a lot in practice. We'll sort of see what he can do today and sort of further evaluate his circumstance and see if he can be effective enough to contribute in the game.
Speak up with your questions.
Well, obviously it's an opportunity for someone else. We've lost a significant number of players at that position, starting with, Terrell Lewis, Chris Allen, now Christian Miller, which was a position that we thought was somewhere we had a significant amount of depth, but this will create an opportunity for someone else who may not have the same experience, but we're confident that they can get ready to play and hopefully do a really good job for us.
Coach, can you talk about the challenge of playing the team you guys have played 4 years in a row and have so much fun?
Well, I think this sort of has become a little bit like someone you play in your league, because we have played, several years in a row now. I'm sure they know a little more about us. We know a little bit more about them. I think that, players still look at, each game as a new challenge. And certainly I think that's going to be important because really good team that you're playing against, which is what you should expect, in a game like this. And I think the players are going to have to focus on what's in front of them in terms of trying to get the kind of execution that will help them be successful in the game, and certainly play with the kind of discipline that's not going to give the other team, opportunities because of whether it's mental errors, penalties, things like that, that are even unforced at times that, can be an advantage to the other team.
That's not really changed the outcome of the game. Of course, we really appreciate the support that you know, but also we know that you have to make
I know you had vision. Is this what you expected from the start?
I think the expectation as a coach is you always want to try to bring the best players that you can, into the program, and then the challenge is always how do we make them the best version of themselves in terms of how can we help them be more successful in life relative to personal choices and decisions that they make, developing a career off the field, developing a career on the field by how they progress as football players. And so I guess, the goal was always to get everybody to be at their full potential, bring the best players to the team, do the best job that you can to develop those players to be as good as they can be. So did we think that we would be able to get the kind of results that we've had the opportunity over the last few years? never really thought of it that way, never really had some, we always talk about focusing on the process, so we were, and the process is very simply, what do you have to do, define what you have to do to be successful, which is what we tried to stay focused on, and that certainly worked well for us. But did I have some vision of we're going to win a national championship someday or whatever? No, not really. I'm sorry. Well, I think it's really important. I know that sometimes the media thinks that I'm not especially fond of what you do, but I really do appreciate what you do in more ways than you know, because you do bring a lot of attention to our sport. You create a lot of interest in our sport. You bring a lot of positive self-gratification to a lot of players by reinforcing their hard work and the things that they do to have success. And Josh does an outstanding job of organizing that, for our entire organization, not just for me, but for all the players. And we also do a significant amount of training for our players so that they can create value for themselves when they do have the opportunity to sort of brand themselves in front of the media, in front of the public. So I think his role is critical, and I think he's done an outstanding job. I can't hear at all. Well, I think I'm always looking ahead. I think I'm always sort of focused on the next challenge. Don't really look back, much. Always have the goal to try to get the team that we have now, the players that we have now, to be the best people they can be, the students they can be, the players they can be, to try to help them be successful. So, we want to try to get the best coaches and the best people in our organization to support them in every way so they can do that. So I'm just not one that ever looks back. You're always looking on, we talk about, the road to success is always under construction. So success is not something that's a continuum. It's something that's momentary. And if you don't continue to focus on the things that helped you be successful and how you improve those things for the future, you become the target for a lot of other people to try to take your place. So it's a lot like climbing a mountain. You push a rock up a mountain, but when next year starts, it's a new mountain. And you better be focused on that. And that's the way we try to approach it, with the individuals in our organization as well as our players.
Facing Clemson once again, I mean, I'm sure you get this question asked a lot, but normally thinking that Auburn's been your big rival. I would like to know if you think that your next big rival.
Well, we don't really sort of look at it like that, like, who's the biggest rival. We have a tremendous amount of respect for Clemson. I mean, they should be congratulated on what they've been able to accomplish. I think Dabo has done a really good job there for a number of years to create the kind of consistency that he has in the program and the success that they've had. And it's no surprise to me that we do have the opportunity to play them again, and we have a tremendous amount of respect for their team and what they've done. And I think because rivalries sort of get promoted by really good teams, really good programs, playing each other, because those games have a tremendous amount of significance, and I don't think this one is going to be any different. Well, my first exposure to the run and shoot was when I was a secondary coach at the Houston Oilers, and we ran the run and shoot on offense, which was a 4 wide out scheme, but really much different than what people run now in a lot of ways. Probably was, the start, the advent of maybe the spread in general, but it's developed, so much through the years that there's not even a lot of similarities left, in how you have to defend, what you have to do, and the kind of patterns that people run, what they do from it, the multiples that they have. The rules have changed relative to RPOs, blocking downfield on passes behind the line of scrimmage. I think those things have really made a huge impact on how people play offense. So it's created a lot of adjustments and adaptability on defense. So that was my first experience in it, so I guess that was the starting point. But how much it carries over in this day and age, I can't really tell you because it's changed a lot. Well, that really didn't come from just the run and shoot. That's something that, when I went to the NFL, there's basically three ways that you can play. You can play man-to-man, you can play zone, or you can play sort of pattern match, and all of them have strengths and weaknesses, and so, we try to implement a little bit of each of those things in what we do right now. Sometimes you're successful and sometimes, not so much. So sometimes if you got the right thing called in the right situation, it's very helpful. I think how you sort of disguise those things probably helps as much as anything. Well, I can't speak for other programs. We want to create a standard at Alabama in terms of how we do things, but I think not just in terms of how we play on the field, but how we create value for our players in terms of helping them be successful in the future as people. Career development off the field by graduating from school, which we've done a pretty good job of. Career development, football development. I think, being successful is really the same formula, whether it's as a football player or being an executive at Apple. So we try to teach our players that, and hopefully some of the experiences that they sort of have competitively as football players can carry over and help them be more successful in life. So there's a bigger standard than just what happens on the football field in terms of what we try to accomplish with our players. And but I really can't speak for the other programs. I know, since we started the playoff type system, whether it was 2 teams, 4 teams, it became everybody's goal to try to get into playoffs and minimize the importance of bowl games and some other things. But so there's some good and bad in all that. But it's certainly been a wonderful experience and great opportunity for our team and our players to have these opportunities to be in the playoffs. Well, it's something that you're always trying to get players to focus so they can pay attention to detail, play with discipline. And I think those things are very, very important, especially when you play against really good opponents, because when you play against good opponents, you can get exposed if you don't do things fundamentally correctly, which takes a certain amount of focus and attention to detail to be able to do that, whether it's taking the proper steps to block somebody, whether it's taking the proper steps to play the right technique in coverage, play your gap up front on defense. I don't think any position is immune from that, and then you have the whole collection of, okay, we have 11 guys out there, whether it's on offense, defense, or special teams, and everybody has an assignment and a job to do, which takes a bit of communication and teamwork and togetherness, which takes a lot of focus and attention to detail as well. So I think it's a critical factor. I think it's more difficult sometimes when you have a lot of distractions that can take you away from your focus. So I think it's really important for players to be able to stay focused on thinking about what do we have to do to win? What do we have to do to win? But focus on what's in front of them, one play at a time, in the game, rather than looking at the scoreboard and letting that affect how you perform, how you play, how you focus. And I think last week's game was a great example of, for the first 20 minutes of the game, we were very focused, we executed well, we played well, and then the rest of the game we didn't have the same focus, attention to detail, more penalties, more undisciplined type play that actually helped the other team. And I think players need to learn from all those experiences and do it better the next time. But when it comes to practice, we're always trying to get that in practice, because I think the way you practice develops the kind of habits that you go play with in a game. But I also think that's very challenging for players to maintain this, and for college players, 15 games in a season is challenging as well.
Dustin, with some of these transfer rules that were on the table then, it could lead to free agency in college football. Has it played out like you thought it would this year? And what do you see moving forward now with the NCAA portal and some of the new rules we're seeing?
Well, I'm really not certain, and I can't really speak about this year, because I think those things are sort of in the future, for this year, as to what happens with, players, whether they decide to go out early for the draft, or whether they think that they would enhance their career by, going someplace else, as whether it's a graduate transfer or whatever it might be. But I don't have a lot of evidence right now based on we're still playing, we're still focusing on this season, haven't even paid a lot of attention to what's happening, other places, to be honest. So I don't really feel like I can answer that effectively. Well, I'm one of those guys that's likes secrets. I don't like for people to know what we do, how we do it, what the best way to improve it. But I think it's more and more difficult because of social media to not have some of that stuff get out there in terms of what you do, how you do it. So does it make it more difficult to sort of control internally what you're doing, how you're doing it, when it becomes public knowledge and information, because it's out there in social media. It's the way of the world right now. So you do the best you can to control it, but I don't really ever get upset about it if we can't control it. Well, I think we try to do that internally with the people in our organization, but I give a lot of speeches on motivation, success, not specific or technical football things. So I don't feel like it's my responsibility to help other people beat us, if that's what you're asking me.
Coach, positive relationship, even while you've been competing for the SEC championship this last 2 years?
Well, first of all, I'm pleased and happy that a lot of guys that have been in our organization with us and done a phenomenal job. But they did a phenomenal job, and they were motivated because they had personal goals and aspirations for things that they wanted to accomplish, whether it was go from an assistant to being a coordinator to being a head coach someday. So I appreciate what they did to help our program be successful, and I'll always appreciate that. And to me, it's only helpful if they can go be successful at what they're doing. And Kirby certainly has done a really good job of that. I think one of the things that, Bill Belichick is a good example. He and I worked together for 4 years in Cleveland. We've been good friends for years and years and years, all the way from when I was back at the Naval Academy in 1981 and worked with his father. So we coached in the same division, when I was at the Dolphins and he was at the Patriots. And we played 2 times a year. But it's not personal. I think that's where some people, when you compete against somebody, you definitely want to do the best you can, to try to help your team be successful, and you respect them because they're going to do the same thing for their team. But it's really not personal. It's not personal. You still have a certain amount of respect and admiration for them as people, the kind of person that they are, the kind of values that they have. You appreciate what they've done to help you be successful, and you understand what they're trying to do to be successful, and you have a respect for that. And I don't think that's unhealthy in any way, shape, or form. So, and we certainly have a lot of respect for Kirby and what he's done at Georgia, and the very, very difficult games that we've had in playing them the last couple of years.
You mentioned secrets a minute ago and not wanting that to get out. When all your assistants become so successful, doesn't that make it hard, considering they've studied under you and learned your ways? No doubt. That they get to pick and choose which parts of what we do they'll utilize, which is and what they want to do themselves to try to maybe make it better. I did the same thing when I was coming up. I learned a tremendous amount from whether it was George Perlis at Michigan State or Bill Belichick at the Cleveland Browns. I don't think I ever worked for anybody where I didn't learn something that was either a good way to do it or maybe this isn't such a good way to do it. But that's what knowledge and experience, that's how you kind of gain it and decide what you feel is best for your program. And then when you get the opportunity to be a head coach, you can try to implement it the way that you feel that you can put the mark on having the best chance to be successful in your organization.
Yesterday when the team got the young players shook hands.
I'm sorry, I can't hear what you're saying.
I said when the team got the players yesterday, got the players shook hands. That's something else.
I'm sorry, I cannot hear or understand your question.
When the team got the plane yesterday, none of the players shook hands with you. So was that something that was told to hire up?
I'm not sure they do.
First of all, I don't think anybody in the organization knew that they were going to be there. So our players weren't instructed, one way or the other. I think they just thought they were fans, that were there. I just noticed that the kids had jerseys on. So I played Pop Warner football. My dad was a Pop Warner football coach. Ida Mae Black Diamonds, you can look it up, back in West Virginia. And, so I just have a tremendous amount of respect for guys that want to be and participate in our sport, and I was just trying to encourage those guys by being positive and shaking hands with them. But I don't think our players even knew that they were going to be there. But I think our players have done a really, really good job of community, supporting the community, supporting athletics, supporting young people playing athletics. We have a lot of young people come to our practices, and our players are always engaged with them. But I don't think anybody really knew that team was going to be there, and I didn't know either.
What kind of season do you think Najee Harris had, and how would you kind of decide how to define it?
Yeah. Well, Najee has played really, really well for us all year long. He's a very talented guy. He's a hard worker. And I always like to have, we always like to have 2 or 3 guys at that position that can play. I think it keeps everybody fresh. It keeps everybody healthy. Rather than having one guy that's carrying the ball, maybe a lot of turns every game and they get wore down as the season goes on. We've been fortunate to have 3 guys that have made a real impact at that position. Different guys in different games, and Najee certainly has had his share of that. I'm sure, as any competitor would like, he would love to play more and get more opportunities, but I think his time will come, and he has improved each year, and we try to get him to stay focused on what he needs to do to continue to improve as a player, and when he gets his opportunities, take advantage of them. I think one thing that players don't always get, and I tell them all the time, is, when I was an NFL coach, they made a reel of the plays that you played. So I sometimes didn't know if a guy was a starter. I didn't know if he played 20 plays in a game or 70 plays in a game. I was just evaluating the plays that he played. So the key to the drill is to go be the best player every time you get an opportunity to play. Because if you were going to evaluate that season, you would only look at that guy when he was playing. You wouldn't necessarily say, how many plays did he play? You would evaluate him on how he played in the plays that he played. And that's really what we try to emphasize with our players, because that's how they're going to get, eventually evaluated. And that's how they create a brand for themselves. So if they're frustrated about how many plays they're playing, and they don't play very well when they're playing, they're not creating any value for themselves. Absolutely. I think that the way offense has changed, there are more athletes that develop at the quarterback position from whether it's Pop Warner, junior high, whatever, through high school, because systematically there's a lot more carryover than there once was, I think, and what it takes to play at the position. So, you see a lot of guys that played similar type offenses in high school that have a pretty good knowledge systematically when they come out. And everything in college is not based on a drop back pass, which is like maybe it used to be, run the ball, have drop back passes and play action passes, where reading coverages and things were, very important. Now you have an offense where a lot of plays are made in the passing game and the running game based on one singular read, which is pretty simple for the quarterback. So, and I think there's a lot more carryover from high school to college, in those sort of systems, which people refer to as the spread. There's different versions of it, obviously. So I do think there's a lot more emphasis on development of players when they're younger, camps, good coaches at that position that, sort of help guys develop. And everybody wants to be a quarterback. We have a little kids camp where we have between 1,000 and 1,200 kids between, 8 and 11 years old. And of the 1,000 kids, 500 of them are at the quarterback position. So out of that bunch, there's usually a couple good ones. For me, I don't think it's that unusual. We have history together. He has history at Alabama. We have history together personally. We spend time sometimes in the off season. We have homes at the same place in Florida. I know his family well. He knows my family well. We have a lot of mutual friends. Again, I go back to when you play these games, it's not personal. I want to do the best for our team, and I'm sure he wants to do the best for his team, and I certainly respect that. And but it's not personal. You don't necessarily have to dislike the other guy to play against him.
When you're hanging out in Florida, you're not talking about just
No, we don't usually talk about our game. Sometimes we talk about things that are significant in our profession, whether it's the game itself, rules, early signing dates, just a myriad of things, recruiting rules. But we really don't talk about the games that we play against each other.
Coach, you said that you are happy with where the college football playoff is right now for teams. There are some others, Brian Kelly among them, who says there's an appetite for this to grow beyond 4. Why do you believe 4 is the good number? And if it goes to 8 or more, how does that affect you and the University of Alabama?
Well, my view is from 1,000 feet. How does it affect college football? Not how it affects Alabama, or not really even whether 4 is the right number. I think when we had 2, there was a lot of speculation all the time about was there another team that should have been one of those teams. I think since we've gotten to 4, I think in most cases the best teams have always been in the playoffs. They may not have been ranked exactly 1, 2, 3, 4, but the committee has gotten the best teams, in the playoffs. There's always been speculation as to somebody else should have gotten in, but there's speculation in the basketball tournament, and they have 68 teams, and then they have a 2-hour show on the teams that got in or didn't get in or whatever. So I don't care if we have 68 teams in the playoffs, you're going to have that. So as long as you get the best teams in the playoff, I think that's fine. I think my issue and concern is there's been a unique bowl games have made college experiences unique for a lot of student athletes, programs, teams over the years. And I think the bigger the playoffs become, the less significance bowl games have. I said that when we started the playoff. I said it when we expanded the playoff last time. And it's true. There's players that aren't playing in bowl games. Playing in the Sugar Bowl used to be a big thing. It used to be a really big thing. Playing in the Cotton Bowl, that was a big thing. Playing in the Orange Bowl, that was a really big thing. Playing in the Rose Bowl, because I coached in the Big Ten for a long time, that was huge. It was huge. Now we have players that choose not to play in those games because they're not in the playoffs. All right, so is that good for college football? I don't know. It's for everybody to answer for themselves. From a media standpoint, because there's so much attention on the playoffs, I can see why a lot of people in the media would like to see the playoffs expand. But there is an expense to that, and that's you minimize the importance of bowl games for a lot of players who had successful seasons. That used to be the unique thing about college football, is a lot of people got a lot of positive self-gratification for having a good season by going to a bowl game and getting rewarded to play another game against another good team.
Obviously, you recruited with Jonah Williams. How difficult or easy was it to get him? How did you pop on your radar?
Well, we do national recruits, so there's a lot of guys that, come up that we evaluate that we think are very good players, and Jonah was certainly one of those guys. And, some guys are interested in, leaving home, and some guys want to stay close to home, and I think that has a lot to do with the family. I think there were some connections back to the east with his family, and I think, they live in Jacksonville now, so, we thought Jonah was going to be an outstanding player, and he certainly hasn't disappointed us. He's really played very, very well for us. He's smart. He's a great student. He's graduated. And, you know, he's probably one of the best players at his position in the country. So, but, you know, we have guys from all over. Quarterbacks from Hawaii, you know, we got guys from Florida.
How much did this high school team have so much success? How much did that help the evaluation process?
When we look at a player, we really evaluate the player almost like we did for the draft, you know, from our standpoint. I think players that's playing successful programs probably get a little more attention, not from us, but from media circles that maybe make us aware, you know, certain players. But we evaluate everybody like it's the draft, so we have critical factors for what we're looking for at every position. And when we evaluate the player, I really don't know how many stars a guy has or anything else. We're just kind of, does he fit what we want at that position? Is he the kind of person? Does he have the kind of character, intelligence, size, speed? And does he meet the critical factors that we look for at that position? And then we decide whether we're going to recruit him or not.
What kind of a toll does it take? This is your first straight national championship. What kind of a toll does that take to get to this point of the season?
Well, I think it's a little bit like climbing a mountain. Obviously, it gets a little more treacherous when you get to the top. Mistakes probably have a greater significance. But I think the way we approach it, and I mentioned this earlier, is all right, we start at the bottom. You're pushing a boulder up the mountain. And every year you got to start over. But I do think, you know, whether it's Clemson or us, that sometimes when you do it consistently, you know, you become the mountain a little bit, you know, because everybody's always playing their best game against you and looking forward to playing you. And I think that's what takes a lot of consistency and focus and discipline and preparation, which makes that makes it a little tougher for the players, I think. Just like, you know, if you look at I mean, we've played LSU, Mississippi State, Auburn, Georgia, and Oklahoma in the last 5 or 6 games. Now we're going to play Clemson. All right, so, and I think 15 games are a lot for college players. So it's one thing I didn't mention about expanding the playoffs. Does that mean we're going to play more games? Better put more guys on scholarship because, you know, just like right now, I mean, we have significant injuries that are affecting certain positions on our team. And I'm sure, you know, most teams at this point would have the same.
Hey, you bring in some guys to speak to your team. I was honored enough to be able to do that. What's the point? What did you really want to get across to your kids, and how has that turned into something bigger and better for you?
Well, I think that it's a part of what we call our personal development program. And we want to take people who have had real life experiences. Sometimes they're athletes, sometimes they're not. And they share their experiences, you know, with our players. And hopefully those experiences are going to help them make better choices and decisions in the future so that they have a better chance to be successful. And it's something that we continue to try to do for our players, and it's all about, you know, your life choices and decisions have tremendous consequences, and we want our players to understand the consequences of good and bad behavior and how that can affect their future. So we want positive examples for choices and decisions that they can make and role models that they can use. And we also want to take other people's life experiences that maybe their choices and decisions had an impact, maybe not in a positive way, so that maybe they can avoid some of those traps.
played in this game multiple years, some of the guys who have played in it before, have you utilized them for the younger players maybe playing in the game for the first time since it's such a big game? I know you like to keep it game to game, but it is the national championship, and it's pretty special.
Well, I think that, you know, we do have some players that have played in this game before, and I think that, you know, young players, no matter what you try to do, maybe will have a little more difficult time understanding the significance of, you know, a game like this. But I still think what we try to get our players to focus on is not the game itself and the significance of the game or the importance of the game, but what do you have to do to be successful in the game? And you got to focus on what's in front of you, which is the next play, regardless of what happened on the last play, and how can I fundamentally execute and just do my job at my position, so it's going to help us offensively, defensively, on special teams, be able to have the best chance to be successful against, you know, other really good players. So that's what we try to get our players to focus on, and it's about execution. It's not about the scoreboard. It's not about external factors. It's about, here's the field, here's how big it is. It's 100 yards, you know, long and 53 yards wide, and we have to go out there and take the right steps and do the right things and make the right reads at quarterback, and you know, play the right gaps on defense and do it with good fundamental technique, because you're going to get exposed when you play against good players and you don't do that.
Nick, what can you say about Tua's progression from this point last year to now?
Well, Tua is a special guy in terms of his work ethic, the kind of person he is, the drive that he has to try to be, you know, really a good player. And, you know, he was a good player last year. He has made progress. I think his experience and knowledge that he's gained through the course of this season has helped that. He's got good players around him, and he's certainly done an outstanding job of distributing the ball and taking what the defense gives, so that, you know, all those players have, you know, chances to be successful as well. So he's done a really, really good job for us. He's one of the best players in college football, and hopefully the players around him will help him continue to do that. Well, I think, you know, both these quarterbacks have NFL potential, no doubt, and the offenses that they run certainly have sort of some elements of drop back NFL passing, you know, type game, and both players executed extremely well. So therefore playing against them is a little bit that way. Yes. I'm sorry. I think I don't know if their offensive system has changed. I think how they utilize the players is a little bit more like when Deshaun Watson was playing. They have the ability to throw the ball vertically down the field. They've got some really good skill guys outside that have done a really good job of making explosive plays. You know, Trevor Lawrence does a good job of throwing the ball down the field. So that was an element of their game last year that maybe wasn't quite as significant as it was before. They had a lot more quarterback runs and things like that that were difficult to defend, which utilized the quarterback's talents that they had. So systematically, not different. How they utilize the people in the system is different.
Coach, obviously a lot of pressure on to prep this time of year. Is there anything you do to relax or unwind getting ready for a game like this?
Not really. I mean, I'd be open to suggestions if you have any. But, you know, you're trying to do the best you can for your team, and it takes a lot of time to prepare for these games, to prepare for practice. And, try to keep people in the organization focused on doing what they need to do to continue to try to improve. I mean, and there's not a lot of time for, other things. So, I can't think of anything I've done recently that, maybe sitting in my chair watching TV for a half hour when I get home at 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock at night. But other than that, watching the Weather Channel in the morning, having a cup of coffee and 2 Debbie cookies with Miss Terry for 15 minutes, that's about the extent of it.
You haven't had a chance to watch Bird Box then?
No, I haven't.
There's so many different challenges that's great about it. First of all, leadership. That's awesome. He does a great job being that local guy that
Well, I talked about Jonah before, and he's, I think, one of the best linemen at his position, one of the best tackles at his position in the country. He's smart. He's very athletic. Great person. Has really good work ethic and, prepares for every game like any coach would like every player to, prepare, and he's performed extremely well and with lots of consistency, throughout his career, and we're extremely proud of, the way he's developed and the kind of person that he is and the kind of leadership that he shows to, other players on our team. Well, I think he'll be outstanding. I really do. I think Jonah is one of those kind of guys, even though he's played tackle for us all the time, he could be a world-class center, guard, and I think he can play left tackle. Probably could play right tackle. He could probably play all 5 positions because of how smart he is and the kind of athlete that he is.
Coach, I was wondering, as an old defensive back yourself, are you at all more, especially are you at all more hands-on defensive backs? How does kind of your experience there affect the way your team defends?
Well, I do probably spend more time with the defense than, other parts of our team, and I do try to help, coach the secondary. I think, now when you're playing 5 and 6 defensive backs, sometimes the secondary coach needs a little help, so I kind of always classify myself as his GA in terms of maybe taking, guys at a certain time in practice and trying to help their development. So I do, but I played quarterback before I played defensive back. But and I got a really good interception on him now. One of the better ones. I'm pretty good at throwing interceptions. I've been throwing them for about 40 years.
Coach, you coached against Mark Richt for many years, former Georgia coach and Miami coach. Your thoughts on Coach Richt and his career?
Well, I think Mark is, I think one of the great coaches in our profession. He did a wonderful job at Georgia for a lot of years. Left there after winning 10 games. I think his last team. Certainly did a good job at Miami. I know they had their struggles this year, but sometimes in one year, if you can lose players at a certain position, or I don't know all the issues. I don't follow it that closely, but I have a tremendous amount of respect for him as a person, professionally as a coach, and his contributions to our profession over a pretty significant period of time. Well, I think, Clemson's always had a pretty good program. They were, a little bit like Alabama, through the years. They've had some really good years, and I think, since Dabo's been there, they have, been consistently successful and done a great job of recruiting. They've done a really good job of developing players. They've had really good continuity in terms of what they're trying to do and what they're trying to accomplish, and I think their success really reflects that. So, and I think that the programs that you mentioned did the same things. Well, you know, Mike was with us as an intern for a year. Then he was a receiver coach for a year. He had been a coordinator, you know, on several occasions in the past, and done a really good job. I really liked Mike's sort of demeanor with the players and how the players responded to him, and he's got really good leadership qualities about him. Really well liked by the players. They respond well to him. So, and I knew that the kind of team that we had coming back, there were certain things that were in his background and his past that he had done that would be very effective for our team. And that was part of the decision and part of the expectation and what we talked about. I'm sorry? I think he'll do, you know, really good, really well. I think, you know, every head coaching position is a little bit different in terms of who you can recruit, how you can recruit, what kind of support do you have in the program. And I think he's got a challenging job ahead of him. But I think if anybody has a chance to be successful in that position, I think, you know, Mike is the guy that could do it. Well, we have a tremendous amount of respect for the program, and you know, we're always looking at successful programs to see if there's something that would improve our program. And I can't think of anything specifically that we've done with Clemson, but you know, we do that to try to evaluate how we can improve quality control of what we do in all areas. You know, academics, nutrition, medical staff, strength and conditioning program, academic support. I mean, we're always evaluating all those things, and any successful program obviously is successful for a reason. So we're always going to look into some of the things that they do. One of the unique things about Clemson is they have a lot of Alabama folks there. Some have worked for us, some not, but so there is a little bit of a different kind of relationship, I think, in a positive way.
This is a good place for the National Championship in the area. Your thoughts on playing at Levi's?
Look, they've always had great venues everywhere we've gone and played in these games, and certainly we think this is a great venue. We have some really, really qualified people who make the decisions about where we play, and you know, to me as a coach, I don't worry about those kinds of things. You know, we knew this is where the game was going to be, and that's where we got to get ready to go play. And we're happy to be here, and we think that the people here have been very helpful and supportive, and helping our team feel welcome, and having the hospitality that we need to have to be able to continue to prepare for this game. Dan has done a really good job. He's very knowledgeable. I think the players have a lot of respect for him. Really good quarterback coach in terms of technique and fundamentals, which I think has helped the development of, you know, our players. And I think it's really helped both of our players play well in terms of what he's done. I know the players have the utmost respect for him in terms of how he prepares them to get ready to play the game, and they've had success because of it.
Ladies and gentlemen, there are 5 minutes remaining in the Alabama media session. 5 minutes remaining. Fans, don't forget to pick up your free Playoff Fan Central ticket.
Well, you know, I've talked about this a lot before, to no avail. So nobody is supportive of what I believe. I think that we should play all Power 5 conference schools should play all Power 5 conferences. Now maybe that becomes Power 6 conference. I don't know about that part of it. And I think we should play more games in our league. And that when we play other games, they should be against Power 5 conference schools, so that you could actually lose a game or two and still have a chance to get in the playoffs. And it would be more based on strength of schedule and things that you've done. It's more like in basketball than it really is in football. And so then I think you would be able to evaluate who has the best teams a little bit better, because we all wouldn't have 3 or 4 games a year that were sort of not significant in terms of how you would evaluate, and you can't. It's hard to qualify. Is this league better than that league? How many good teams do they have in that league? How many? I mean, those things are difficult. But if we all played each other more, I think it would help that.
Okay, so he did the interview whatever. He talked about how Hunter Renfrow. Remember that? Yeah, we don't figure out what she was talking about.
I don't honestly know exactly all the things the selection committee does, to make the decision. I just assume that they, from several different resources, look at the total body of work, that a particular team does relative to, strength of schedule and, those types of things. So, but we're not on a level playing field now, all right? I mean, if you play a championship game, we played a top 4 team in a championship game. So we actually played an 8-team playoff this year for our team. Some teams didn't have to do that. And, the other thing that I would recommend to you all is, why do we have 8 weeks of rankings leading up to who gets in the playoffs? Why don't you do it like basketball, when you take the whole body of work that a team has done, including the championship game and who they played in the championship game? That might affect the seeding and the rating of who goes where. For you, hey, you're on TV all the time. You got the voice, man. I'm just trying to give you some food for thought. So please don't kill me over this. I absolutely brought them with me. I don't know why I like them so much, but I've been eating them for as long as I can remember. 2, small kind, not the big ones with the gooey stuff, and 1 cup of coffee, 6:15 every morning, watching the Weather Channel. That's how we do it. So. I don't think there's any question about it. I know that every guy in our program, it's our goal to help them be more successful in life because of their involvement in the program. We believe in personal development. We do a lot of personal development programs. We have mental conditioning for success. We have peer intervention for behavioral issues, drugs, alcohol, agents, gambling, domestic violence, how to treat the opposite sex, macho man stuff, fights, guns, all these types of things, to try to get the players to understand the consequences of good and bad behavior. We have leadership seminars to get them to understand how they impact and affect other people. We have branding seminars, whether it starts with communications, how do you get, interviewed, how do you brand yourself publicly in so many ways. So we are trying, and it works with certain players. Certain players respond very well to it, mature, actually make significant changes, and other players not so much. No question. You know, I had a lot of great mentors when I was growing up. My high school coach, other than my parents, probably had as much impact on me and my future and direction, and certainly my college coach, Don James, and you know, whether it was Miss Turkovich in high school playing geometry. I mean, I remember them all, and they all had some kind of. Rose Matthews was my English teacher in high school, and I didn't like English, and I didn't have very good grammar, and I probably still don't. And she helped me realize the importance of communication. You know, what we try to emphasize with our players, probably the two most important things in developing a successful future is your character and your ability to communicate. And we're always trying to get guys to make the right choices and decisions to develop those things.
All right, Coach, that's all the time we got today.
Right,
thank you.
Good. Thank you all.